Hello everyone, welcome back to the program Listen to God Daily through His Word, where we take a small portion of Scripture and read it out loud and make application. Our portion today is in Romans chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. We're working our way through the book of Romans, and here we find out that God still has a plan for His people, even though Gentiles can get saved too. Romans chapter 11, verse 1. I say then, hath God cast away His people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God hath not cast away His people, whom He foreknew. Wot ye not what the Scripture saith of Elijah, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, The Lord, they have killed thy prophets, and digged down thy altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men, who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Even so then, at this present time also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. Otherwise, work is no more work. So what is Paul saying here? Well, in verse 1, he says, hath God cast away His people? Because the Gentiles now can be saved too through Jesus Christ. And so God has made a way for the Gentiles to become part of His family. So he's asking, well, what does that mean for the Jews? Has He given up on the Jews? And Paul says, well, obviously not. God forbid. I'm a Jew. I'm an Israelite. I was born of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. So Paul is not a foreigner. He's a Jew, and he's saved. God called him to be an apostle and wrote most of the New Testament. In verse 2 it says, God hath not cast away His people, whom He foreknew. God knew His people. He picked them on purpose so that they could show Him to the world. Unfortunately, they didn't always do a great job. Well, that's like us today. We don't always do a good job either. So what means, know you not that the Scripture saith of Elijah? Don't you know what the Scripture says of Elijah? Elijah, after defeating 450 prophets of Baal and causing it to rain again, ran I don't know how many miles and sat down and felt sorry for himself. And he said, Lord, in verse 3, they've killed thy prophets and dug down thine altars. They've destroyed your altars. They're killing the prophets. And now they're coming after me. And I am the last one. Do you ever feel like you're the last one? You're the only one who's trying to do right. You're the only one who's trying to live for God. Well, Elijah was feeling that way. But God let him know. Well, first God fed him. And then He let him know in verse 4. But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. God had 7,000 men in Israel who were not following Baal. God always has people who believe on Him. So when you're feeling lonely and depressed and all by yourself, seek out God's people because they will encourage you. You are not alone. The people in this world are going through the same things you're going through, and maybe even worse. So when you feel like you're all there it is, get with God's people and encourage each other in the Lord. But God was telling him, no, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. And besides all that, think about it. God was feeding him. God was taking care of him. God was sheltering him. Anyway, in verse 5, he says, even so, at this present time, there's a remnant according to the election of grace. What's he talking about here? He's saying that just like there was a remnant in Elijah's time, still be faithful to God, there's a remnant today that it was faithful to God. Who are the remnant? They're elected according to grace. So God's grace is shed upon those people that believe in Him. And they're His remnant. They're the believers in Him. They're His representatives on earth. They're His hands and legs. And they pray, and they work hard, and they tell others. That's His remnant. Anybody who's saved is a remnant of God. And in verse 6 is kind of interesting. It contrasts grace and work. Verse 6 says, if by grace, if they're elected by grace, then it's not more of works. And otherwise, grace doesn't mean grace. There's no more grace. So what's he saying there? He said, we're saved by grace, the grace of God through Jesus Christ, His Son. And if we're saved by grace, we can't work at it. We can't become good enough for God. We can't do enough to please God. That everything we do is only good after we're saved. So we can't get to God by our works. Otherwise, grace isn't grace. Grace means something else. And then he says, if it be of works, then it's no more grace, because work is no more work. We're only saved by grace. And people say, well, I'm doing this. I'm saved by grace. Yeah, but I'm going to work hard. No, no, no. You should work hard, but not for your salvation. You should work hard for service because God has saved you. It's all done. We're finished. All you have to do now is live for God and tell others about Him and do the right things and have a different life than you had before. Why? Because God has saved you from hell. That's grace. And then if you're saved, you're going to work for God. Why? Because you love Him. You want to please Him. You want to do those things that make Him happy. You think it makes Him happy when you go to a bar? You think it makes Him happy when you decide to do sin that you shouldn't be doing, that you used to do before? No, you want to do those things that make Him happy. So you're going to live your grace by doing the right kind of works. This is a great passage. We're not alone. God has made a way for all people to come to Christ, Jews and Gentiles. And if you believe, then you can too. Guys, thank you very much for watching and listening. And until next time, keep listening to God. We'll see you.